Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a new year. Happy New Year. I'm coming back after being off for a while doing the training. So if you follow me, you know that I was actually sick for a while. I didn't actually expect to totally be under the gun since the 22nd, but I'm back. I'm excited for 2026. There's a lot of changes that happen within the federal market within the federal government. And as we go along, I hope to bring you information you can use and use it in a way that can help you as you plan your 2026 and frankly 2027 goals, because sales in 2026 help with 2027 revenue. We're going to get going into today's training. It's funny, I just realized I forgot to keep my scrolling bar on and some of these other things. I've been out of practice for a little bit, but hopefully I'll get back and I got some good information as we get started talking about an introduction to the Defense Contract Management Agency. Recently, DCMA, they put out a strategic plan for 2026 through 2030. And this is a really interesting plan for me, but a really interesting understanding of DCMA and how they fit into our world. And so that's why I want to bring today's training to you. If you don't know this, the Defense Contract Management Agency is an independent set of eyes and ears for the Department of War or the War Department, enhancing soldiers' lethality by ensuring that the government gets timely delivery of quality products, and they also are providing relevant acquisition insights, supporting the affordability and readiness that you hear about constantly from the government. The War Department created DCMA to provide contract administration and acquisition services from pre-award through sustainment. So this is kind of our world, right? Every day DCMA's team delivers, and this is pretty exciting, 2 tidbits of numbers, but every day DCMA delivers more than 1.5 million items, products and services to America's military forces. And every single business day, they're authorizing more than $1 billion in payment. $1 billion in payment to go to government contractors like you. Beyond contracting as the nation's acquisition combat support agency, DCMA delivers accurate insight to the War Department's decision makers. It enables them with operational planning and execution out there. Their real-time monitoring, assessing, problem solving, and reporting on health and viability of the major defense programs is vital, and the supply chain that feeds them. This is all critical to the military operations around the world. As your company has more success, DCMA is going to become a bigger part of your world, right? They're going to have a larger impact on your growth. And that's why I wanted to do today's training. It's important to know where they fit into your growth strategy going into 2026 and 2027. I'm going to break up today's training into 5 key parts. And actually number 5 is, a 4-part series on its own. It's going to be a lot of information. I'll try to go through it fairly quickly. And then I encourage you to continue the journey of learning about DCMA and where the impact on your future growth happens. But I'm going to start with just what is DCMA from a high level. Then I want to I always like talking about why should you care about DCMA. DCMA. They don't actually buy anything. I mean, they buy a little bit, right? But on the grand scheme of what they touch, that's not theirs. They're doing it on behalf of the services. You'll hear about this. I wrote some truisms about DCMA, and this is really important as it relates to a lot of us when we think about sales and how DCMA might fit into there, or more importantly, might not, right? Number 4, I'm going to talk about what large primes and DCMA look for. Both of them are about organizational maturity that's out there. And then the last thing, if we have time, I want to break down in the strategic plan that DCMA released, they have 4 strategic lines of effort. And so I want to go over just my quick summary of them that helps you think about where they're at as an organization. I don't say this in today's training, but DCMA has I think it's like $1.5 billion budget themselves for about 11,000 people. So that's what they're supporting, but they support trillions in government spending. And this is that second part is the part I really want to talk about. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am founder of Call Plan AI, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. Part of that process goes from A to Z, and when you follow it, you have repeatable, predictable results, and this is what I want for you. One thing I am discovering is I'm coming back after 3 weeks of being sick, and as much energy as I feel like I have, I got to keep reminding myself to drink water and pause a little bit. If you're not following me on LinkedIn, definitely do. Definitely subscribe to my Government Contracting Success newsletter. And then register for tomorrow's training. I haven't set it up yet, but tomorrow's training will be talking about how to identify those right agencies that are going to be a good fit for you in 2026 and frankly, going into 2027. So let's start with what is DCMA. DCMA stands for the Defense Contract Management Agency. Again, like I said a minute ago, they're not a buying agency. You don't really go in to sell the DCMA, and they don't issue contracts. Of course, they have some support contracts themselves, like IT, professional services, very small amount. But mostly they're managing other people's money, the Army, the Navy, Air Force, et cetera. DCMA shows up after a contract's awarded. Their job's to make sure the government actually gets what it is paid for, on time, at the right quality, and according to the contract. And this is a pretty big deal on where they fit in, right? They act as the government's independent eyes and ears inside the defense contracts. If you think about a contract, the officer awards the contract and finance will pay the contract. In between is DCMA on these larger, more complex contracts, making sure that the government is getting what they paid for and that it's being done at the quality they need. DCMA looks at things like delivery, performance, quality paperwork, and whether the contractor's following the rules in general. This is kind of, you hear people talking about CMMC. That's one of the most visible rules that are out there. And one of the big talking points about it is that CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Certification, it's just related to what we all have been saying we've been doing in our contracts. Well, DCMA is looking across that contract completely, especially bigger ones. They also play a big role in whether work is even accepted, right? I talked about you got a contract officer awards the contract and somebody's going to pay it, but in between is whether that work's accepted, and DCMA fits into that world. Now, admittedly, most small businesses, most small contractors never see DCMA at all. Frankly, for a lot of the contracts I had that were SharePoint related, IT related, they were a lot more fixed price contracts, 5-year contracts. Even though they were big for me, multi-million-dollar contracts, they were pretty simple for the government. But as contracts get larger, as they get more complex and more important to the mission, DCMA begins to become involved, and we'll talk more about that. What I want you to just remember, though, DCMA isn't about winning the contract. It's about providing or proving that you're delivering on the contracts that you won. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind. So that's the what is DCMA. Quick introduction, and you can go learn a lot more. And when I talk about the lines of effort, you'll understand it even more. But let's talk briefly about why I care about DCMA, especially when I sit there and say that, often you don't even hear about DCMA, or it's not really feeling like they're in an impact. If DCMA hasn't impacted your business yet, that's normal. Again, I said that's happened to me, right? Most small businesses start with simple contracts and they never see DCMA at all. DCMA becomes more relevant as contractors get bigger, as they last longer or become more important to the mission. Certainly some really easy ones to think about is a battleship being built or an airplane being built, major programs that are out there. As the risk goes up, oversight goes up. They've got a really fascinating video on DCMA that tries to explain what they do. And it's the reason I call it fascinating is because they go through showcasing different people in different roles within DCMA, and they showcase how important their role is, and they tie it all the way out to the warfighter in the field. where I have been when I was in the Army, right? And so we were downrange, and these are the people we look back to and thank. So as risk goes up, oversight does. And DCMA is the organization that steps in when government needs the confidence that the work's going to be delivered correctly. And it's not just at that high level. They also do it on Kevlar helmets and things like that. And so it bounces around. You don't need to engage DCMA today, but at some point you need to understand, where do they fit? Because they represent the next level of maturity in your DoD or Department of War contracting that you're doing. Companies that plan for DCMA early tend to scale more smoothly and attract large teaming partners because we're kind of ready. We're not surprised. If you've ever, one of my classic maturity step forwards is when people go from spreadsheets or QuickBooks to a full-fledged accounting system, right? That's a big deal. And anybody who's been through it knows you can't just flip one to the other. When you go to the next level of maturity, you almost go back to scratch and start again. And so thinking that way, I want you to think about these things early. It's really important. The more prepared you are, the smoother those transitions go. And more prepared, sometimes it's just being aware of where does DCMA fit in. Companies that don't often feel like, or don't prepare, right? They often feel like DCMA automatically just showed up, or one day they just showed up and it slowed them down. They're like, we never had to do that before. Well, technically, you probably needed to do that before. Just DCMA didn't care because you weren't big enough yet. And so you weren't attracting their attention. But you are attracting large attention and teaming partners' attention. The bigger your contracts get and the more complex, the more people begin to care about it. More entities begin to care about it. And your larger teaming partners, primes, will care about it even before DCMA. But you can pay attention, and I'll talk about this in a minute, pay attention to what DCMA is saying to understand how that aligns to what your large teaming partners might care about. So caring about DCMA right now, it's not about compliance, right? It's about preparing for the next stage of your success in the War Department as you look into the Department of War. So let's talk about some truisms. I talked about this a minute ago that DCMA, really, you don't look to them from a sales perspective. I often look into agencies. I'm like, how can I build relationships that'll lead to introductions and to sales and et cetera? Well, don't think of DCMA this way. DCMA is purely compliance. DCMA is the honest broker kind of thing, right? DCMA's credibility depends very much on them being independent and neutral, right? They have to be not just seen that way. I often talk about you want to find the line between ethical and non-ethical, right? You put your toe on the line of ethical, and then you take a huge jump back. Well, if you think of that way, that's a good place for us contractors to live, a huge jump back from the line between ethical and non-ethical behavior. Well, DCMA did that, and then they took 3 other extra steps back, right? They need to be seen, and they need to be independent so they can represent the government's best interests in there. And they also, if you learn more about them, they also are working in their industry partners' best interests as well. They want to make sure that industry is serving the mission the best way. And sometimes that is bringing them insight. It's really important that DCMA is seen as, I talk about ethical line jumping back, but an arm's length away from industry, no level of interaction, right? You're not trying to get in there and build relationships and have coffee and interact a lot with these folks, because they need to be very cautious about anything that looks like favoritism. Anything, right? It's one thing for you to be doing this inside the wire with a program office, a core, or whoever, right? That's normal. You're working with them on a regular basis. These people are disconnected from that. And it's important for us to remember that. A couple of things that DCMA will not do, and it's important to understand this as well, right? They're not going to be the ones that tell us about an opportunity coming up. They're not going to tip off a vendor. They're not going to make introductions. Again, they'd love to make the introduction, but now you begin to worry about anything that's looking like favoritism. They're not going to advocate for contractors. They will talk to the industry buyer, the government buyer, et cetera, and work their way in, but they're not focused on the industry side. They're staying way away far away from it. And they certainly are not going to steer work towards anybody. And so these are things that you can pay attention to as you think about DCMA. You can learn a lot more about that and the way they operate with their partners, whether it's industry and government partners. You can learn a lot more about it. Defense Acquisition University, DAU, has got this great training for acquisition professionals within the War Department. And you can go over to the website and it doesn't even require a login, right? I have a login for DAU, but you can go there. It doesn't even require a login, but you can walk through and understand DCMA much better and how they interact with their government buyer partners. Okay, one last thing I wanted to share as it related to just DCMA generally before going to LOEs is that, when you think about DCMA and large prime contractors, I want, especially small businesses out there, I want you to kind of see them the same way in the sense that they have a strong desire for compliance and accountability. They want to know that they can count on industry partners, right? And so when they're looking to us and when we're thinking about what they require and what DCMA requires of bigger contractors on their bigger prime contracts, when those industry partners have flow down rules that are coming down and they're looking for us to be compliant as smaller businesses, they want to know that we can show what's due, what's delivered, what's accepted out there. That means this ability to ask you don't need crazy tools that are out there, right? To be able to sit there and ask you a question about what's going on and you can talk to them about this. As I was preparing the training, I was remembering ISO certification. If you're familiar with this at all, it's a certification basically around process. And a lot of companies will go get ISO certified and do everything in place to put everything in place to get their company to the stage where they're like process improved. They're showing that they're doing process. And then after they get the certification and they have that on their tag now, they stop doing it. They stop living it. It actually used to be something I would do as a competitive differentiator is I would encourage the contracting officer to put in contracts that we industry partners had to demonstrate how we are managing our ISO certs daily, like how we are continuously doing it beyond getting certified. And so when you think about large primes, you think about DCMA, this is a simple way of what they want. They want to know that you can show them what's done. When you think about the pricing, right? Can you explain the cost and the labor simply? It shouldn't get overly complicated. It actually, as I got into doing this training since 2018, and I trained tens of thousands of small businesses, it actually surprised me for a long time how much people struggled with pricing and how little they really understood the cost behind what they were offering to the government, right? And the labor that goes with that. But you should be able to explain that. And that's what any larger prime is going to look for from you, and what DCMA obviously looks in there. They want to know that you can track issues and close them. Down below, I think I said this, right? They don't need you to be, no, I didn't say this, so I'll say it right now. In the government, if you've ever got a CPARS rating, one of the things is the government doesn't expect you not to have problems, or they don't expect you to run a contract and there's no problems. That's not the measurement of a high quality CPARS. High quality CPARS comes from what do you do when a problem happens, right? Problems happen. These things pop up. Something happens. Okay, fine. How quickly did you recognize it? What did you and your team do to address it and close it, right? What did you do to make sure it's not going to happen again? These simple things are what the DCMA and large primes look for from us. I know some of these seem weird, and maybe I should have put them on the truism slide, but you'd be amazed like how much sometimes we small businesses aren't tracking on what people will ask us as we mature as organizations, as we land bigger contracts. Another big one that they're looking for is, can you tie invoices to real work? If you've got invoices coming in, if you've got subcontractors on your team, that's cool. Here's regular billing and all this kind of stuff. Can you tie it right back to work? For me, I'm thinking like the 15-minute increments. I worked on this. I worked on this. I worked on this. Can you tie it back to the actual work? The government wants to know that if they're paying these invoices, it's aligned directly with a piece of work that you can verify, that you can point right to, and the people who are working with you can do that as well. And it's the same thing on the subcontractors, right? You can't just bring a subcontractor onto your team. And think about this, large prime contractors, when they feel like they're being burdensome to us and making us jump through compliance hoops, it's not because they're trying to be difficult. It's because they got DCMA looking at their contracts saying, hey, can you tie your invoices back to real work? Well, I don't know, because my sub does 20% of it. I look to my sub. Can they do this? If you have subcontractors yourself, right, can you show good control over your subs? And some of these things that I talk about are those ways. I put here at the bottom this line. It's a great line because it's really important to remember. DCMA, when they're looking out there, right, and even large businesses, they don't need small businesses to be big businesses. What they need is for us to be predictable. I used to talk a lot about this in training and interview sessions I do with larges, where one of their biggest concerns is they don't want to bring on a teaming partner, subcontractor, and then have to babysit all the work and have to worry about getting dinged on the contractor side, contracting officer side, because my sub is not living up to the right quality. So we don't need you to be a big company. And what that means kind of is even your tools. We don't need you to go out and buy an SAP big program that's a couple $100,000 to put in place. No, you can use whatever basic tools are good for you in your company at this time. But can you sit there and manage the work? Can you be predictable? Can I look at you and say, tell me about the work you've been doing? And in a simple way, you can. And you can reference a couple of tools that you use. You don't have to use the billion-dollar company tools. Excuse me. I'm doing pretty good for being 3 weeks sick. I wanted to thank Voltron for being our sponsor for these lives. I really appreciate their support in the lives. Voltron, if you don't know this, helps you write more winning federal proposals with their purpose-built AI. They're federal focused. This is a part that I really like about them, is they'll help you drive, excuse me, when you find an opportunity you like, they'll help you drive towards a compliant, compelling, and competitive draft response within minutes rather than weeks. And that's a really important thing that enables us to have more time to be able to do capture and interact with the customer, or to write a much more compelling response. Excuse me. So thank you very much to Voltron. Do me a favor, please throw a thanks into the chat for Voltron. Charles Mitchell's got it right. Voltron rocks. Throw that in there, would you? Appreciate it. Okay, so I mentioned that DCMA had dropped out their strategy documents, and I wanted to share just their 4 lines of effort and walk through each one of them a little bit so you kind of understand, and hopefully it'll encourage you to go do more research. But line of effort 1 here is the foundation of what DCMA does. It's about strengthening the defense industrial base so warfighters get the equipment that works on time and at the right quality, right? We always say on time, on cost. What is the 4 projects? On time, on scope, and on cost kind of thing, right? DCMA is shifting from the end of line inspection to earlier risk-based surveillance, using better data to spot problems before they turn it into delays or failures, right? Quality and reliability are the focus for DCMA, not just delivery. And I talked about that before. So for industry, the message for line of effort 1 is simple, right? Companies that are predictable, disciplined, and serious about quality are going to have an easier time of it as this model takes place. And this is what I want you to kind of dig into. You can see each one of these lines of effort focus on a line of effort and then a strategic objective that is measuring their progress towards that. Line of effort 2 is about making contract processes faster, clearer, and easier to navigate. DCMA is focused on cutting delays after award by using more automation and simplifying how work moves through the system. Track on a training I'm going to do with Kate next week. She's going to be talking about how to really manage the contract after the award, which aligns to here with what DCMA is doing in line of effort 2. They're also updating policies to align with FAR reform, moving away from unnecessary steps and towards risk-based decision-making like in LOU 1. At the same time, DCMA is tightening financial accountability and increasing collaboration across the government. For industry, this means fewer bottlenecks, clearer expectations, and faster delivery and payment, when things are done right. And that's, I think, what we all want, right? Line of effort 3 here focuses on cost and pricing. DCMA is modernizing how it supports pricing decisions by removing redundant requirements, using better data, and applying modern tools. I think we hear a lot about this out there, and we're just going to keep hearing more. The goal is to give contracting officers faster, more credible costs and pricing insight while improving the value for the War Department. For us in the industry, that means pricing will be looked at more consistently, more data-driven, and especially as contract gets larger and more complex, you'll see it fit in there. Line of effort 4 here is about the foundation that makes everything else work. DCMA is aligning its people, facilities, technology, and organizational structure to meet changing mission demands. That's going to include closing the skill gaps that you'll read in there, modernizing systems, and reducing internal friction so the agency can respond faster and work more efficiently. And again, for industry, this means DCMA is building itself into a more capable, more consistent partner as oversight and expectation increases. And it's our responsibility to make sure we're tracking on what's important to them, not just in these lines of effort here, but also understanding their strategy and the direction they're going. They've got a new director, a new top dog. I forgot the title for, I think it's an admiral now. It was a lieutenant general before. But they've got a new focus and they're driving forward hard, and it's our responsibility to be tracking on this. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, just this is a very high level overview and introduction, right? So do your own research. Go in and understand, how does DCMA align to my future, right? My strategic growth for my company. Understand that. Review your internal systems. If you're a very new company, you don't have to overly worry about it, but begin to ask the next higher up entity you're working with how your internal systems look like or what they want. And when I say next level up, bullet 3 here is understand large prime expectations. That's one way you can do this, is go start with a small business liaison officer at a large prime like SOSI or Booz Allen or Leidos or somebody. Go talk to them and talk to them about your focus on organizational maturity and what they look for from an organization like yours. We sometimes get caught up only talking about opportunities in the pipeline, but we also want to make sure that we're looking good to those large primes and to the War Department as we try to serve them. Do me a favor, if you found value in today's training or any of my training that I put out or my posts that I share on LinkedIn, repost it without comment. It gets the word out to more people, and it helps us grow our community, and I really appreciate that. One last question I wanted to ask before you jump is, we did a networking event in December, a virtual networking on Zoom. Do you want me to do it again in January here? If yes, put networking yes. If no, put networking yes. No, just kidding. Let me know. I want to see whether there's enough of us who are interested in that, and I will do that. Don't forget tomorrow's training. I will line it up about how to be targeting the right agencies. I just didn't get a chance to get it done. I'm getting back to the swing of things here. But I do remember at the end here, I say, remember, government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. Part of that process is ending on time with my voice still intact, and that's what I'm going to do. Hope you have a great day and Happy New Year.